Pearl is a prequel to the film X, which came out earlier this year. I did a review for it if you want to check it out. Actually, I think it would be over here. Yeah, sorry about that. Great movie. I do just want to note though that it did somewhat shrink on me since then. There are some aspects about the way that movie concludes that I thought didn't really work that well. So I do think I slightly overrated it at the time of my original review. But, you know, we're not here to talk about X. We're here to talk about this movie, Pearl, which I honestly didn't even realize was a prequel to X until very recently. I didn't see a single trailer for this movie, just a couple of posters. I saw that Mia Goth was on the posters, so I thought, oh, okay, is this about her character Maxine from X? But no, it's actually about Pearl, who was the old lady in X, so like, okay, that makes sense. It's called Pearl, that's her name, so obviously it would be about her. This takes place in 1918. It's about 60 years before X takes place, the events of that film. And it's cool seeing Pearl when she's obviously a lot younger, because even though I know in the movie X, she's supposed to be the villain, we're supposed to not like her, I couldn't help but kind of feel bad for her character. It seemed like there was like some lost innocence deep down somewhere, and you kind of do see that at parts of this movie with the way it starts. It's like, oh, okay, she was actually kind of a good, but then you see other things that happen and those feelings kind of go away. This movie is once again directed by Ty West. Surprisingly, I say surprisingly, not because he did X. I would expect the same director that did that movie to be doing a prequel to it, but because it feels like a different movie from the very beginning, you know, even though it takes place 1918, which is well before the early days of television, for me it did kind of feel like this early TV show that has a horror theme to it, but also a bit of a comical, sarcastic edge as well. It takes kind of a weird approach of showing these like pretty horrific things and disturbing things happening, but kind of playing it off in a humorous way, and it ends up actually feeling a little more comical than X did, even though X did have more laugh out loud moments, more jokes per se. This, in a weird way, it feels like it's embracing comedy even more, and it's not in a very obvious way. Really, you kind of gotta dig deeper to see where this comical edge is coming from. Anyone that has seen the movie will probably completely disagree with me on that. I don't expect people to be like, oh yeah, I see what you meant. I'm aware that this is probably a very unpopular opinion. Of course, goes without saying that this was just my viewpoint on the film. I think the film also does some interesting things with the setting, both where and when it takes place in Pearl's life. She is, at the moment, still living with her parents. They're in this pretty distant home, like far away from the downtown area. They have a farm. You tell they're kind of just barely getting by. And oddly enough, you kind of feel bad for her a little bit. You kind of, you know, you're wanting her to sort of be more than this typical farm girl. I mean, for me at least, I was like, yeah, you know, I can kind of get behind her wanting to do these other things and have these other aspirations in life, even though she's, you know, kind of a crazy person. And I think that leads me to talk about how this is a, you know, a so-called origin story, but it is really not a traditional downward spiral of a character, a descent into madness, as some people will call it. It is really more of a number of events that take place throughout the film that slowly start to expose her true self more. I mean, she's kind of psycho from the beginning, and it just becomes more and more apparent as the film goes on. Mia Goth, I think, was one of the standouts out of the cast from X, but I mean, here it's like, I'm going to use a basketball analogy for you NBA fans out there. Watching her in this movie is like when, you know, there's a team that you follow, and there's one particular player on the team that he's a rookie and he's coming off the bench, but he's really good. You see a lot of potential in him. He's a solid player. And then the next year, he's put into the starting lineup, and all of a sudden, he's this all-star caliber player, and you're just like, wow. I mean, I saw this coming, but I didn't expect it to happen this quickly, just in his second year. That's kind of what it's like watching Mia Goth in this movie, just how much she stepped up in this film. There are more than a few of those moments where it's like I could see them probably, you know, if she were to get nominated for the big award, like that's probably the clip they would use when they were announcing her nomination. The rest of the cast was good as well. There's really only a few other main actors in the movie, and like they were all good, but I mean, I kind of don't think anything even come close to how good Mia Goth was. I mean, just what a fantastic performance. A couple of minor complaints I do have with the movie revolve around, one, there being this character that I feel like should have been utilized far more than they were, because they play a pretty big part in Pearl's life, where she's at right now. And they were basically just an afterthought in the movie. I don't know why they were so underutilized. And lastly, you know, just kind of nitpicking here, there wasn't really that feeling of, oh, okay, so this is where it all kind of ties together. You know, like certainly not in the way that the Star Wars prequels tie with the original trilogy. There isn't that moment like, oh, okay, so now this is how it all comes together, and this is how it all, you know, sort of builds and leads up to what happens in A New Hope, or in this case in X. I'm aware that there is another movie they're working on. I believe it's also a prequel. I am looking forward to that movie. I will definitely go see it when it comes out, but there is a part of me that's also just like, man, I don't want this to become just one of those franchises that starts pumping out these sequels every year or every couple years or whatever. I don't want it to be overdone, because I really do feel like just these first two movies in this series really have been some of the most unique and well-made horror movies of the decade up to this point. So I really don't want them to overdo it, and I want them to focus just on making good movies and not so much on setting up other films later on. Thankfully, though, up to this point, that has not been the case. The focus has very much been on the films, on the filmmaking, and on the storytelling, which is, as a movie lover, that's all that I can ask for. And I'm basically gonna have to give this a 9.5 out of 10. I really liked almost everything about it. I think it's actually even better than X, which I don't know. I feel like more people will probably like X a little bit more. Personally, though, I think this one just struck a better balance between the horror and the drama and the comedy and thriller aspects. I thought it just kind of weaved together these genres in a more cohesive way. Also, much better ending. I won't talk about it, but this ending, much better, much more stuck the landing for me. Definitely go see this movie. You know, go see X if you guys haven't seen either of these. I think you could still watch this though without having seen X and enjoy it. So I mean, you do whatever you want. I would recommend watching X first though, just so you'll sort of know the world that you're about to get into. Thank you all for watching. I've been recording for way too long. This is kind of embarrassing actually, how long I've been sitting here and just thinking about what to say. So I'm ready to be done filming and to stop talking. So peace out.